All right, I'll bite. I open the door. Man, I hoped I wouldn't get this far. I haven't thought this far ahead yet, and I really need to drag this out. The room is roomy with lots and lots of room. In the room, you can see that there's more room to the north of the room, more room than the room really needs. The door is slightly ajar. Through the door, you can see that there's more room. Descriptions. The art of painting a tapestry with your words to inspire the theatre of the mind, or an anxiety causing chore that makes you call into question the grasp that you have on your very own language, the one that you've spoken your entire life. Solid descriptions, in my opinion, can make or break the difference between a good game and a great game of Dungeons and Dragons. There's a reason why the wordsmiths like Brennan Mulligan and Matthew Mercer are really at the top of the game for D&D. While I personally can only hope to one day hold a candle to their ability, I'm going to share my advice for writing better descriptions for your Dungeons and Dragons game. One of the most frequent mistakes that I see in Dungeons and Dragons games is being overly verbose, writing 5 or 6 sentences to describe a chair on the floor, or using a dozen adjectives to describe the sort of ooze falling from the ceiling is plain overkill. It can be really tempting to try and explain every single aspect of an item or creature, but your player's internal theatre can fill in a lot of the gaps and actually make the image more creative and vivid in their mind's eye. And if you really ham up those descriptions with more and more and more words unnecessarily, you're going to lose some of your more inattentive players, and that's not their fault. Or it could even end up confusing an already really clear picture that your players have. Instead, try to keep descriptions to around 2 or 3 sentences, using only a couple of adjectives wherever possible. If you're intentionally vague with your descriptions, then it gives your players an opportunity to explore the things in the environment and ask questions about the world, interacting with the things that you've described already. And this is where you go into the greater detail and depth of your descriptions. This means that information is given in small clumps that is more easily digestible by your players, who don't have everything written down on a sheet of paper in front of them, rather than a long string of words that gets muddled up and muddied by the time they actually come to interact with it. So you might describe a wizard's study like this. You open the rotting door. The long settled dust scatters from its resting place in a cloud across the circular room, gently setting on the rotting wooden furniture. Your eye is drawn to a pile of scattered pages, spattered with the dark crimsons and browns of old, dried blood. And next to it, a hastily drawn summoning circle, now lost with time. This alludes to a greater depth of the room without giving unnecessary information straight away, and highlights important aspects of the room without giving things away to the players, without them getting to interact with it. Now your players can go and examine the pages or the summoning circle, or take a look around the rotting desk, or maybe find something hidden amongst the dust and grime. And that's where you can go into the greater details about what's actually involved in that area of the room. As a kid with ADHD and a massive gob, my teachers always used to tell me that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you speak. Obviously, as a forever DM, I just love the sound of my own voice. But the advice still rings true. As a DM, it can be really easy to get caught up in the speaking roles of the game, explaining, having NPC interactions, and officiating. But it's equally important to listen to your players' contributions, whether they mean to or not. Oftentimes, they come up with ideas that make more sense or are just plain more interesting than yours. If your players entered the wizard's tower that we described earlier and started discussing their plans, maybe they'll mention looking for some tome or a clue as to what happened to the wizard. Or they'll say, I bet that summoning circle was for Orcus, the demon that we read about a few sessions ago. Then you look at your notes and just see that the summoning circle was just for show. Ditch that, throw it away. Use the descriptive gold your players just cast at your feet. You bet a dusty tome with the carving of a visage of a demonic face just spawned underneath the rotting floorboards. Maybe there's some hidden runes carved into the wall that utter a single name. Orcus. And now the summoning circle was clearly an attempt at summoning a greater demon. Listen to your players' discussions, and obviously within reason for the story. Let what your players want or expect to find guide what actually is in the room when you get there. Your world and game will be all the richer for it, and your players will feel like they're making some really meaningful decisions. which they are. Only a fraction of the people watching my video are actually subscribed. If you want more D&D content, consider subscribing, and if you're enjoying the video, please leave a like, comment, and share. It really helps out with the algorithm more than you'd expect. Thank you. You know when you're watching a horror movie or playing a horror game, and you're cowering in your seat, practically quaking with anticipation for the scare that's about to come. What's been built up for this entire movie, the creature. You may jump at coming face to face with the monster after all this time, but now it's become tangible. You know what it looks like, and with that, it becomes far less scary. Humans rely on sight, after all. If you're trying to set a scene with terror, especially with a horror game this Halloween, refrain from describing the monster outright. At least initially. While on paper it might look scary and horrifying to describe its enormous claws or its gaping maw or its cold, dead eyes. Giving the monster tangibility ultimately reduces the terror that it can instill. Instead, allude to the creature, remaining intentionally vague to keep that visceral fear of the unknown. Let your players' imaginations run wild as to what's behind the things that they're finding in the environment. Instead of describing the creature, describe what it's left behind. The sound of enormous claws being dragged along concrete, like a cat scratching down a chalkboard, echoing from deep within the compound when suddenly they stop. A mutilated corpse, not eaten but torn apart, as if for sport and enjoyment. The briefest glimpse of movement at the end of the corridor. A lithe figure sped silently through the darkness as you squint into it, stalking. The creature should only be described once terror reaches its peak. And even then, make sure that you follow the advice from earlier. Less is more. Describe the details only when they become the center of focus for the players, whether that's an attack, an investigation, or a jump scare. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and comment down below letting me know any of your own tips for writing. Let's help each other become better descriptors. Subscribe and hit the bell for more. See you next time.